Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Marnik, and I am a postdoctoral researcher at the Mount Desert Island Biological Laboratory, and this video is one of the ones that is part of the virtual Family Science Night. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about a really important molecule in science and in life. But before I introduce that, I want you to think about what the next four images that I'm showing you have in common. So this first image is a bunch of plants, and then we have animals like elephants, giraffes, lions, butterflies. Then we have insects and bugs, and then we have humans. So take a minute, you can pause this video if you want to, and write down a few of the things that you think might be the same between all of these different living organisms. So when I use the word organisms, what I mean is just something that is alive. So a bug, an animal, a human, a plant, a tree, they're all living organisms. So if you've come up with a few ideas, one of the things that you might have thought of is the fact that we are all part of the earth and the world, and that's true. And then another thing you might have thought about is that we're all alive, like I just mentioned, and that is also true. But then you may have or may not have thought of DNA. So DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, and it is a really important molecule because it is the instructions to make living organisms. So from DNA are all the instructions needed to make every single part of your body and every single part of a plant or a tree or an animal, etc. So when I explain DNA, I like to use the example of a recipe to make cookies. So when you're making cookies, you have a bunch of ingredients that combine, and then you have instructions for how to combine those ingredients to end up with cookies at the end. And DNA are like these instructions. They have the directions that are needed to make up an organism. And then another way that you can equate cookies and DNA is by looking at the different kinds of cookies. So as I mentioned before, all of those different organisms I mentioned, plants, animals, humans, insects, they all have DNA. And some parts of their DNA are the same, just the same, like they're the same between all of those different organisms. So some parts of my DNA are the same in insects and in animals and in plants. So you can think about that like cookies. So cookies usually have some common ingredients. Those are things like flour and sugar and eggs. But then they also have parts of their ingredient list that are different, right? They have cookies or peanut butter or cinnamon. And those things that are different are what make them unique from the other types of cookies. And the same is true of DNA. While we share some of our DNA across all of these different types of organisms, we all have unique parts of our DNA that make us who we are. Parts of our DNA make me human, but then other parts of my DNA also make me different from other humans. So we have some parts of our DNA that are shared and some parts of our DNA that are different. But we all have DNA. So DNA, like I mentioned, is important, and it's made up of all of these different bases that I'm going to explain just in a little bit. So it's called adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine, and these are the four bases that make up DNA. And you can think of bases like building blocks. And these building blocks come together to form this double helix structure that is the iconic image of DNA. And this is what it does, in fact, look like. And these four bases can be arranged in tons of different types of orders. And that order, you can think of like the code or the instructions. So the order can vary, and that's what makes DNA different. All DNA is made up of these bases, but the order that the bases are in might be different between different species or different organisms. So DNA lives inside of cells. So organisms like plants, animals, etc., are all made up of cells, and inside of each cell is DNA. And DNA lives in what's called the nucleus of a cell. And there's a lot of DNA because there's a lot of different parts of animals and plants and humans that need to be made. So to fit DNA inside of a nucleus, it has to get squished down into things called chromosomes. So that's a fancy word, but all that it means is DNA that has been squished up to fit within the nucleus of a cell. So I'm going to go back to my cookie example. So you have DNA, which are all of the instructions needed to make cookies. But on the DNA, you have things called genes. And these genes you can think of as the specific region that is needed, that is the directions to make part of the ingredients. So if that might be confusing, so I'll explain that again. So if you have a gene, gene A might be the instructions to make flour, and then gene B might be the instructions to make eggs. So each gene is a different instruction for one of the things that are needed to ultimately make up all of the organism, or in this case, all of the cookie. And the end product of a gene is called a protein. And a protein forms the structure of the cell and the structures that ultimately make up different organisms. And it goes through an intermediary step that's called mRNA, but I'm not going to talk about that today just to save you guys time, but maybe another time we can talk about that. But as I mentioned, all of these different proteins come together to end up with making a cookie in this case. So you would have eggs and flour and sugar and cinnamon, as I mentioned before, but the same is also true for humans. So humans have, and any living organism, have a bunch of different genes, and each gene has a different instruction. So you have some genes that one gene does your skin color, one gene does your eye color, one gene does your eye shape, one gene does your eyelashes, and then you have a gene that does the color of your hair and the texture of your hair, and there's all these different genes that control, that have the instructions for those different components. And that is because the eye and the skin and the hair are made up of proteins that are what is made from those genes. And then when all of these things come together, you have a human that has all of these skin and bones and hair and organs. And all of those directions to make those things came from genes on the DNA. So when you're looking at insects or plants or other humans or animals, we might look different, but ultimately we have a lot in common because we all share our DNA. We all have DNA and we all share parts of our DNA with each other. So the next part of what we're going to do is we're going to actually get to see what DNA looks like with the naked eye. So when you're looking at it with the naked eye, it's not going to look like a double helix because you have to look at it with a really high-powered microscope to see that. But you can see what it looks like just to the naked eye. And you're going to do that by removing the DNA from strawberries. And that is called extracting DNA from strawberries. So the next part of the activity, I'm going to actually take you through how to do that. And you should already have a list of things you need to do this experiment with me. But if not, you can watch me do it, and then you can have your parents buy some strawberries and these supplies next time they go shopping so that you can do it again on your own. Thank you guys for watching. So now that we learned a little bit about DNA before, I'm going to teach you guys how to extract DNA so that you can actually see it. And extract just means remove. So to do this, you should have already had the protocol on the video, so you guys can get this ready. But you need a Ziploc bag, you need strawberries, you need a cup, you need a half a cup of water, you need, I have to double check, 1 teaspoon of salt, and then you're going to need 2 teaspoons of dish soap, and then you're going to need a coffee filter and another cup. In this case, I'm using just a mason jar that I've put the coffee filter into. You're going to want toothpicks or a coffee stirrer, and then you're going to want cold rubbing alcohol, which is over here. So first what you're going to do is you're going to grab 2 strawberries and you're going to remove all of the green stems and put them into this Ziploc bag. And you can do 2 to 3 strawberries. So I'm going to do 3. And the more strawberries you smush, the more DNA you'll get to see at the end. So this is a great use for all those old strawberries that you have in your house. So then you're going to seal up your baggie and you're going to smash them. You want to make strawberry juice. All right. So once they're nice and smashed, you're going to take the 1/2 cup of water and pour it into another cup. the 1 teaspoon of salt, which I already measured out, and then you're going to put 2 teaspoons of dish soap. After you've added the dish soap, you're going to stir this around. And once it's all stirred, you're going to carefully pour it into a bag. And if you want, this might be a good place to ask for help if you need a little help holding the bag open while you pour everything inside. And what happens is the dish soap and salt mixture is breaking open all of the cells of the strawberry and releasing its DNA. So you want to mix all of this together gently. You don't want to make any bubbles. You just want to mix it all together and give it time for that dish soap and salt to break open the cells of the strawberry. I made a little bit of bubbles, but that's okay. All right, so after you've done that for a little bit and you've gotten all of that mixed up together, you're then going to filter it through that coffee filter. Now you can just use a normal cup, or you could use a funnel, or if you don't have a mason jar like this, you could put your coffee filter over a cup and then use a rubber band to hold it in place. So then you're going to carefully open up this baggie, just enough to carefully pour out this mixture into the coffee filter. And you're going to let it filter. You want to pour all of it in, so you might have to wait while it drains down to get more in. So that's all been added in. And now you can see that the strawberry juice that's mixed with the salt and the dish soap is going in. And now you don't want to drink this because it has soap in it. And when you eat soap, it makes your stomach sick. So you don't want to do that. So once you've drained the strawberry juice in and gotten rid of all the extra stuff, you're going to remove this into one of your other cups that you've used, or measuring cups, or regular cup. And now you need to carefully add this ice cold rubbing alcohol. So I'm going to use this measuring cup to put some of the rubbing alcohol inside. And then what you want to do is you want to pour this cold rubbing alcohol along the side of the mason jar or your cup. And then you're going to let it sit there. And what's happening now is that when the dish soap and the salt came in contact with the strawberry, it broke open all the cells, and inside of the cells is where the DNA of the strawberry is. So after you've done that, this liquid mixture has DNA there. So by adding this ice cold ethanol, it causes the DNA to come up out of the liquid, and then you can actually see it and spool it around a toothpick or a coffee stirrer. So now, if I just stir it like this, that whole white mucusy looking thing is not mucus, it's the DNA of a strawberry. And there's a lot of DNA in there. And you can look at it, and that's DNA. So that's how you extract it.